the public library, a common fixture in the landscape of any county, city, and community. There's the central branch, the hub of the network, and the home of the largest collection, and then there are the neighborhood branches, spread out across the region to serve the specific needs of local populations. The branches serve as community spaces and connection nodes, bringing the resources of the library to a wider geographic area. The infrastructure of public libraries upholds two primary values. First, the importance of a permanent physical space as both a visual landmark and a gathering place for people and knowledge. Second, the values of circulation and access, that books should not stay in one place but should travel to where people need them the most. Many library users won't stop to question these values because the infrastructure they represent seems to work just fine. But in fact, there have been many attempts in the history of public libraries to create new infrastructural models of service. The best example of this is the bookmobile and its many subsequent iterations, notably Los Angeles' own Feminist Library on Wheels. Let's take a closer look at what these mobile libraries do and what potential they hold for the future of public information services. The perambulating or itinerating library was born around the turn of the 19th century in Northern Europe and the Eastern United States. Wagons were used to visit diffuse rural populations without wide access to books or the means to establish permanent local libraries. The 1930s produced an increase in mobile services due to the availability of automobiles and to the improvements made by the Works Progress Administration to road and highway infrastructure. Included in the New Deal was a unique provision for the Pack Horse Library Initiative, a program in Appalachian, Kentucky, where librarians on horseback delivered books to remote mountain communities inaccessible by car. Between 1936 and 1937, the Pack Horse librarians succeeded in serving 50,000 families and 155 schools. Even after the end of the WPA, bookmobiles continued to gain popularity. However, it should come as no surprise that not all citizens have benefited equally from mobile services. In the 1950s and 60s, during the era of Jim Crow, libraries and bookmobiles perpetuated institutional segregation and racism. When white populations began to abandon urban centers for the suburbs, bookmobiles would follow these communities so they wouldn't have to return to the cities while their new libraries were being built. Meanwhile, separate bookmobiles were bought for minority communities, frequently under the guise of educating and Americanizing these populations, while also attempting to discourage patrons from visiting and integrating the actual library buildings. In this instance, bookmobiles may have been labeled as a means to increase circulation, but in reality they were used to divide communities and deny equitable access to resources. Municipal libraries are funded by the state, and when the state is discriminatory, public service will be too. Bookmobiles slightly waned in popularity during the decades surrounding the millennium, likely due to universal government budget cuts and the rise of digital services. However, there are still efforts being made around the world to reinvigorate the mobile library model and to serve the needs of communities that are neglected by traditional library infrastructures. In 1966, the Kenyan government launched the Camel Library Service to serve itinerant and refugee populations in Eastern Africa. And in 2002, a similar camel-powered library was established to bring library services to the nomadic tribes of Mongolia. In Brooklyn, New York, Olaronke Akinmowo runs the Free Black Women's Library, an installation project that makes pop-up appearances around the city and encourages visitors to take a book and leave a book. The collection is entirely literature by Black female writers. In Baltimore, Maryland, the Enoch Pratt Free Library runs a mobile job center where librarians provide career services to communities across the city where access to the necessary technology and instruction is limited. These are all examples of mobile library services that expand the notion of what a bookmobile is and what it can do in the 21st century. And then there is Los Angeles' own Feminist Library on Wheels, or FLOW for short. FLOW was founded in 2014 by Dawn Finley and Jen Whitty, two cyclists and members of the Women's Center for Creative Work, a nonprofit communal feminist workspace in East Los Angeles. The center was looking to start a library collection, and Finley and Whitty were inspired by their cycling practice to put that collection on wheels. The Women's Center is now home to the permanent collection of about 5,000 items of feminist literature and ephemera, all acquired through donations. If you are a FLOW card holder, you can request a book through their online catalog, which will then be delivered by bicycle to a drop point close to your location. Drop points are participating cafes, bookstores, or other small businesses. You can also meet FLOW at events such as farmers markets and political protests, where they have smaller collections on display. Finley describes FLOW's mission as this: to make as much feminist material as available to as many different people as possible, with minimal reliance on cars. Not because we have a singular idea of what feminism is and how it should be encouraged, but because we have a tool we want to share, for people to use in ways that are productive and meaningful for them, their families, their communities. So what do FLOW and her contemporaries teach us about what we value in libraries and what we need them to do for us? In the 21st century, it's easy to fall for the misconception that bookmobiles are unnecessary to library infrastructure. The world's population is increasingly centered around dense urban centers, as opposed to being spread out across rural countrysides. This means most people nowadays live within a convenient distance to a library branch. However, the brick-and-mortar library branch still requires the user to come to them. And even in a city like Los Angeles, with an excess of transportation infrastructure, this journey can still be difficult and a deterrent for many people. Yet the need for library services and free information access is as present as ever. Bookmobiles like FLOW bring the library and its resources to the user and are a reminder that libraries don't need physical spaces to do their work. The work of a library is performed in moments of personal interaction, exchanges of materials, and contact with knowledge. Mobile library services are an infrastructure of when, and they remind us as users that there is value in flexibility and impermanence. When we cannot find our way to the information we seek, or we are excluded from the institutions providing that information, that is when a bookmobile should come find us.